So I've gotten some extra requests for this tutorial. Some of the requests I've gotten is adding the throwing knife animation and adding some enemies to this series. And I'm going to add the throwing knife animation first, and then later down the road we are going to add some enemies with some simple AI that we can attack and kill with the throwing knife and with our normal sword. So the throwing knife animation is a little like the attack animation, but the difference is that the throwing knife animation will have to spawn a throwing knife during the animation, and this throwing knife will have to be thrown in the direction that the player is actually facing at the moment. So you can see I already added it to this project just to test it out and to show you how it works before we get going. And you'll see that when I press the throwing knife key, he will play the throwing knife animation and throw a knife in the direction he's facing. And it works exactly the same way as it does with the normal attack. So we'll be able to jump and press the key here, and then we'll be able to throw the knife mid-air, as you can see here. And it also transitions the same way. So if we are already throwing it when we are in the air or when we're just landing, well, then it's going to stop playing the throw animation in the air and then just land and finish the throw animation, as you can see here. One more thing we'll have to fix through this little series, or this part of the series, is the sliding animation. Because when I left off last time, we just added the slide animation without fixing the pivot point. So you'll see here the character is able to slide mid-air, and that's not the point. So we'll also use a few minutes fixing this little thing here. But that's what we're going to be looking at throughout this little part of the series. So let's get started. So before we start doing any coding or changing around in our script, we will have to fix the sliding animation, because right now he will still be sliding mid-air if you haven't fixed it yourself, of course. So to fix the mid-air slide, we'll have to go to the sprites folder here, and inside the sprites folder we'll have to go to the character folder, and in here we'll have to find the slide animation. When you have scrolled down and found the slide animation, you'll have to click on the first image and then hold down shift and click on the last image to select all of them at once, because we would like to change all of them at once so we don't have to do it on each and every sprite. So now that we have selected all of them, we can actually click on the pivot point here, because that's exactly what we want to change, because right now the pivot point is in the center of the character, which apparently means that he's going to float above the ground when he's sliding. So what we'll have to do is to move the pivot point a little up, so that he gets closer to the ground when he's starting to slide. So instead of having sensor selected here, we'll have to click on it and select custom. And when you pick custom, you'll see that you will be able to switch the X and the Y here on the sprite. And it's exactly the same thing as we did when we fixed the attack animation, because when we had the attack animation in the beginning, he jumped a little to the left whenever he attacked. But we fixed the pivot point by moving it to the right so that he wouldn't jump to the left anymore. So right now the Y is set to 0.75, which is a little above the center, so it might actually work just with this standard value for custom. So you can actually try to press apply, and when you press apply, you can try to play the game and see if it works for you the way he's like sliding now. Now you can see he goes way lower, so he's not on the he's not in the air anymore. If you want to move it up, you can always change 75 to 70 maybe or something. But right now I'm actually pretty happy with the way he's sliding right now. So I think I'm just going to leave it with 0.75. And that's how I'm going to have my sliding animation. So with that fix, we will have to start looking at the scripts. So the first script we'll have to open up is our player script, and there's actually quite a few things we'll have to change in here, because when I was adding the functionality earlier for testing it out, I figured that we can actually make a way better structure in this game to make it easier for us later when we have to add the enemies and reduce the player's health and the enemy's health during an attack, for example. So we will have to restructure this a little so that the player doesn't have this much responsibility as he has now, because we can take some of the responsibility from the player and give it to our animations, so that, for example, our throwing knife animation knows when to spawn a knife in the game and throw it in a direction. And our attack animation will know to stop the player from moving when we're attacking on the ground, and so on. So we will have to jump all the way to the bottom here to start our little restructure. And I promise you, we are going to have the same functionality when we're done with the restructure. It's just going to be easier for us later when we are going to add the throwing knife and our enemy attacks and all those things. So first of all, we can see inside is grounded. We have an if statement that checks if we're colliding with ourselves. And in here we are resetting a trigger and setting a bool. And we basically don't need these two lines of code anymore. So we can just remove them like this. If we scroll up, we have a function called reset values, and we don't need that either, because now our animations are going to take control of this. So basically we can delete reset values. And when we scroll further up, we have a function called handle input, and inside the handle input we have some jump and attack bools we're setting true. And we will also have to delete everything inside these if statements, but keep the if statements because we will need them later. And if we scroll further up, we have handle attacks, and basically we don't need this function anymore, so you can just take and delete the whole handle attacks function. And then we have the handle movement function, and the handle movement function will have to be rewritten a little. So I think we are going to delete everything that is in here and rewrite it, because there's actually a lot of stuff in here that we don't need, and the easiest way is just to delete it and rewrite everything. It's not a lot of code that needs to go there now. So instead of finding every single spot and changing it around, we're just going to delete everything in here, and we're going to rewrite it in a moment. If we keep scrolling up, we will see some red lines on handle attack and handle values. And the reason of that is, of course, because we just deleted the two functions, so they don't exist anymore, so just delete them as well. Okay, so now we have cleaned up all the functions, so we'll have to go to our fields next. And up here we'll have to remove is grounded, we'll have to remove jump, we'll have to remove jump attack, and we'll have to remove slide, we'll have to remove attack, and we'll have to take my rigid body and cut it and paste it all the way down here in the bottom. Okay, so now that we have rigid body here, we'll have to change that as well, because my rigid body is not going to be here anymore. We are going to make a property. So actually we can rename my rigid body by pressing F2 or right clicking and clicking rename, and rename it to my rigid body with capital M. So now we have our rigid body, and we need to make this one public, and we'll have to make it into a property. So we'll have to have a get and set, and to find the structure we can just go do like this, and you'll see that we need this get and set behind my rigid body as well. So we can just copy this and paste it here. So if you have Visual Studio, you can get this structure here by writing prop and tap 2 times, and when you do that, it creates this property for you. If you don't have Visual Studio, you can just write this code yourself. Okay, so we will need a bool called attack with capital A, and we can just copy this one and paste underneath, and we'll need a bool called slide with capital S, and we'll need a bool called jump with capital J. And I think that's it. We will also need a bool called on ground instead of is grounded, because if we would call it is grounded with capital I, it will interfere with our function here called is grounded, because it has the exact same name. So the reason we write these with capital letters is because they're properties and they're public, and to recognize a property or distinguish a property from a variable, a normal variable, we use a capital letter So the variable bool like this, you don't need to write this, just an example, would look like this. A normal variable will look like this with non-capital, and a property will look like this with capital A. Yes, okay. So the reason I use properties is just because we need to access them from other places later, and the easiest way to do that is just to make a property instead of just making a public field, which is not very much object oriented. So you can see here 2 places it's complaining about is grounded. So inside fixed update we'll have to use on ground instead, and we'll have to use on ground down here in handle layers. Let's save this. Yeah, so now we can go down and rewrite our handle movement function. So first of all, we will have to make an if statement that says if my rigid body dot velocity dot y is less than 0. Then we're going to say my animator dot set bool land true. So here we are going to set our land boolean to true, and this indicates that we will have to go to our animator when we're done making the script and change some things around so that it fits with the new script we have, because right now we have some triggers and some bools and they don't really fit with the script we're writing right now. So to make it easier for us, we're just writing the script first and then we're going to the animator and changing some stuff around. And when we're done with that, well, then everything is going to be fine and everything should be working as before. And then in the next video, we can add the throw attack. Then we have an if statement. This is if our attack and negative slide and or we are on ground or air control, or actually let's do like this, air control. This should actually be and. So if we're not attacking and if we're not sliding and we are on the ground or we have air control, well then we need to be able to move around. So here we can say my rigid body dot velocity equals new vector 2 horizontal multiplied by movement speed my rigid body dot velocity dot y, and not my animator, my rigid body dot velocity, and then underneath we have to make the last if statement that says if jump capital J and my rigid body dot velocity dot y equals 0, then we will have to say my rigid body dot add force new vector 2 0 jump force, and we need one more parentheses there. Okay, so now we have the if statements, and down here we'll simply have to say my animator dot set float speed math f dot abs horizontal. There we go. Okay, so now we have all the handle movement functionality again, and we can actually save this, and then we will have to go out and add some stuff to our animator now. I'm going to wrap up this part of the video, and in the next part we are going to have a look at what we need to change inside the animator to make it work with the new script structure. If you haven't done it already, then please don't forget to follow me on Twitter and like my Facebook page and subscribe to this channel to stay tuned for more updates. Remember that InScope Studios is a community founded page, which means that all your support is very, very important to me. So if you're interested in supporting me, you can do it in different ways. You can either just download this current project on the link on the screen right now, or you can also support me by becoming a patron. If you become a patron, then you will get lots of different perks, and you will also be able to get every single project that I ever made. Again, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you'll continue with this series.